It started on a hot Saturday in June at a mixed doubles softball tournament in Charlotte. I wasn't even planning to go. I had been up late the night before finishing reports for work, and the last thing I wanted was to spend my only free day sweating in a community park. But my friend Kendra wouldn't take no for an answer. "He's going to be there," she said, her eyes twinkling. "The guy I was telling you about. Super cute, plays third base, volunteers at the shelter, whole package." I rolled my eyes, but I went. And she wasn't wrong. His name was Nathan. He had this warm, confident smile and the kind of easy energy that made you feel like you'd known him forever. He made a dumb joke within the first 5 minutes, and I laughed harder than I expected to. "I'm Rachel. I'm 33 years old and live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I teach 3rd grade and have a soft spot for iced coffee, crossword puzzles, and people who treat strangers with kindness." Nathan checked every box. He was funny, charming, and sharp, but what really pulled me in was how naturally he fit in with my friends. Within an hour, he was making Kendra laugh so hard she was gasping for air and helping Rob tape up his knee after a clumsy slide into home. He walked me to my car that evening, and when I got home, there was already a text waiting. "That was fun. You have a great laugh. Let's do that again." And we did. Again and again, for 5 years. Nathan made everything feel easy. We were good together, steady, kind, and respectful. No big, dramatic fights, no ugly silences. Just comfort and trust. I didn't believe in soulmates back then, but I believed in effort, and he made me feel like I wasn't the only one putting it in. It was me who proposed. That might sound bold, but it didn't feel that way. We were at my place after dinner, eating leftover pie and watching reruns of The Office. I looked at him and just said it. "Want to get married?" He blinked at me for a second and then grinned. Hell yes. His family, though, they were a different story. Quirky, sure, but not in the cute way. His parents, Janice and Alan, owned a high-end furniture business, glossy showrooms, Italian imports, phrases like curated aesthetic tossed around like sprinkles on a donut. They were obsessed with appearances and money, always going on about legacy and building empires. Every holiday dinner came with at least one offhand comment about the struggle of being first-generation business owners, as if it excused their arrogance. Janice once looked around my tiny apartment and asked if I liked the minimalist lifestyle or just hadn't gotten around to decorating yet. I smiled, gritted my teeth, and said I liked it quiet. I tried to tell myself they were just proud people, that they didn't mean any harm. But that quiet concern about their constant bragging and their not-so-subtle judgment sat in the back of my mind like a warning I didn't want to read. I was 10 when Mom first started tutoring other kids after school. She'd sit at the kitchen table in her work slacks and a wrinkled blouse, her glasses slipping down her nose, walking middle schoolers through equations and essay drafts while our spaghetti boiled on the stove. Back then, I didn't get it. She worked full-time as a high school English teacher. Wasn't she tired? "Some kids just need someone who doesn't give up on them," she'd say, her voice soft, like it was obvious. It wasn't until much later that I learned 2 of those kids were Nathan's siblings. They had been struggling, his brother barely passing math, his sister shut down completely in class after a rough year at home. I only pieced it together years after we got engaged, during a chat with Nathan's aunt who casually mentioned how lucky the kids were to have found someone like your mom back then. I didn't even know she'd been involved. Turned out, my mom had done more than tutor them. She'd lobbied the school board to keep their summer program alive when budget cuts hit. When the board refused, she pulled together her own savings, the fund she'd quietly set aside for new flooring in our kitchen, and donated it to cover the program costs anonymously. The principal told me that part. He still remembered her name 15 years later. She never mentioned any of it to me. After she passed, I found a folder in her nightstand, worn edges, filled with handouts, schedules, a couple photos of smiling kids at a summer reading circle. There were thank you notes, too, crayon-colored and crooked. One of them was from Nathan's sister. "Thank you for believing in me." It broke me, and it made me realize how much of my mother I carried in my own bones. She didn't care about credit. She didn't care if anyone noticed. She just saw a gap and filled it, whether it got her praise or not. That quiet kind of grace, that's what I wanted to live by. When Nathan and I first started talking seriously about marriage, I remember telling him that story. Not all the details, just the way she'd spent her life doing small things with big heart. He nodded, even said she sounded like someone the world could use more of. But his parents never brought it up. Not once. Even when they bragged about how well his siblings had turned out, or how grit and discipline were what got their family through hard times, they never acknowledged her. Never thanked the woman who had carried part of their legacy on her back in silence. It gnawed at me, quietly. I told myself they probably forgot, that maybe they didn't even realize how much she did. But deep down, I think they knew. I think they just didn't think it mattered. She wasn't flashy. She didn't come from money. And in their world, people like her, people like me, just fade into the background. But I never forgot. I built my life around her values: dignity, sacrifice, empathy. And as I started planning my own wedding, I promised myself one thing: her name would be part of it. Somehow, some way, she would not be invisible again. It started small, like most things do. I suggested we write our own vows. Nathan hesitated. "You sure? That's a lot of pressure," he said, glancing over his shoulder toward his laptop where the seating chart blinked. "Might come off a little intense." Then it was the playlist. I sent him a list of songs my mom used to hum while grading papers. Norah Jones, Carole King, some old Motown. He skimmed it and said, "Yeah, but wouldn't it be better to pick stuff people actually dance to?" At first, I let it go. I figured wedding planning was stressful, and maybe I was just reading too much into it. But then I brought up the idea of including a small tribute to my mom during the ceremony. Just a photo, maybe a quote in the program, nothing over the top. He looked at me like I'd asked to set off fireworks indoors. "I mean, we already have a lot going on that day," he said slowly. "Don't you think a memorial would be kind of heavy? Weddings are supposed to be happy." "She was my mother, Nate." "I know," he said, already turning back to his email. "I just think it's a little sentimental. That's all." When I mentioned it to Janice, his mother, over coffee, hoping maybe she'd be more supportive, she pressed her lips together and said, "Oh, honey, I just assumed we'd focus on the couple that day. You and Nathan are building a future, not dwelling on the past." I blinked. "She helped your family." Janice tilted her head, clearly feigning confusion. "Did she?" "She tutored Ethan and Chloe. Funded that summer program after the district pulled out." Nathan said. "Oh, right," she interrupted, waving a hand. "Well, that was very kind of her. But we all worked hard back then. We've all made sacrifices." I bit the inside of my cheek. She went on. "And don't take this the wrong way, but there's a reason most people in our circles keep their ceremonies refined. We don't want things to feel too homemade. Nathan's building a name now, and there's a certain image that comes with that. Homemade. Like I was bringing a casserole to a gallery opening." Later that week, I stopped by the showroom where Janice and Alan worked. I had hoped to pick out chairs for the reception, something simple, warm. The assistant walked me through some options, but when Janice spotted us, she slid in, all smiles and soft mockery. "Darling, I think these might be a bit too schoolteacher," she said, tapping one of the simpler designs. "We need something that says elevated, not elementary." I stared at her, stunned. She knew exactly what she was doing. That night, I told Nathan about it. He laughed. "She's just being playful," he said. "She's got a weird sense of humor. Don't take it so personally." But it was personal. Every decision felt like another quiet erasure. My music? Too sentimental. My mother? Too sad. My background? Not elevated enough. And Nathan? He didn't push back. He didn't stand up for me. He just moved with the current, smiling as it slowly swept me under. It was supposed to be our wedding. But somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like mine. The rehearsal dinner was held at a country club so polished it felt sterile. The kind of place where linen napkins were folded like origami and nobody dared laugh too loud. Janice and Alan practically lived there on weekends, always going on about their platinum sponsor privileges like it was a birthright. Apparently, they'd cashed in one of those privileges to host our dinner. From the moment I stepped into the entryway, it felt wrong. There were gold-accented welcome signs with Nathan's last name in oversized script, floral arrangements big enough to block half the guest's view, and staff in tuxedos passing around hors d'oeuvres I couldn't pronounce. His mom had insisted on managing the whole thing. "We want the right people to be there," she said when I asked about the guest list. "Clients, business partners, a few press contacts, some of Nathan's colleagues. It's going to be a networking moment as much as a celebration." I had smiled then, politely. But now I stood at the entrance, scanning the crowd, and felt like a prop at my own event. My parents were there, my dad looking stiff in his borrowed suit, my Aunt Linda nervously clutching her purse, but they were tucked away at a table near the back, like overflow seating. Nathan's family, meanwhile, had the center table under the chandelier, packed with sleek-haired women in designer dresses and men with slicked-back hair and loud laughs. I pulled Nathan aside after greeting his cousin for the third time. I still didn't know her name. "Hey, why is my dad seated all the way in the corner?" I asked gently. He looked over, then shrugged. "It's just a layout thing. There weren't a lot of seats near the center. It's not a big deal." "It is to him." Nathan leaned in with that smile he used when he wanted me to drop something. "It's one night. Let's not overthink this, okay?" The night wore on. More toasts were made. None from my side. Janice floated from table to table like she owned the place, and in some ways, maybe she did. I caught her introducing me to one of their friends as Rachel, Nathan's fiancée. "She teaches at one of those public schools. Bless her." One of those public schools. Bless her. I didn't say anything. I just excused myself to the restroom and sat in the stall with my hands in my lap, trying to steady my breath. Nathan never said a word. He smiled when people complimented the setup, nodded when his dad talked about the family's impeccable taste, and laughed along when his mom retold some story about Nathan's childhood triumphs. My name barely came up, and when it did, it felt like an afterthought. That night, I lay awake in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling fan spinning overhead. We were less than 24 hours from becoming husband and wife, and I had never felt more alone. The dinner was winding down when Alan clinked his glass and stood at the center table. "I won't keep you long," he said, smiling like he was about to accept an award. "I just want to say a few words about my son." Everyone quieted. Forks paused midair. Nathan leaned back in his chair, smiling politely, a hand resting on my thigh like a paperweight. Alan launched into a speech about legacy, about grit, about how Nathan had always been a natural leader who made smart, strategic decisions, including, of course, choosing someone who balances him emotionally. He chuckled. "Rachel's a sweet girl," he added, lifting his wine glass toward me. "A little emotional at times, but good-hearted. That kind of thing keeps you grounded, right, son?" I blinked, forcing a tight smile as a few people chuckled. Nathan didn't say a word. Then Janice stood up, gliding across the room like she was presenting at a conference. "I just want to add how proud we are of Nathan," she began, "and how far our family has come. Our business started in a garage, and now look around you." She motioned to the chandeliers, the waitstaff, the glint of polished silver. She turned to me next, smiling like we were best friends. "We're also grateful for Rachel," she said. "She's come such a long way, too. It's not easy adapting to our pace, our world, but she's tried. And we've helped her along the way, little tweaks here and there. Hair, posture, presentation." She laughed, and a few guests followed her lead. Nathan looked at his plate. And as for her background, Janice continued, pausing dramatically. "Well, we don't all come from the same place, do we? Some of us come from humble roots. Her mother, for example, was always involved, always showing up to solve things no one asked her to." That made Alan laugh. "Oh, Janice, remember how she used to just appear at those school events? Always with extra handouts and solutions? It was like she ran the place." Janice smirked. "Yes, she was enthusiastic, maybe a little pushy, but with the best intentions. We always admired that kind of spirit." People laughed. Light, easy laughter, the kind that fills rooms where no one expects to be challenged. I sat frozen, my spine straight, every muscle locked tight. Pushy, enthusiastic, showing up to solve things no one asked her to. They were talking about my mother, the woman who had tutored their children for free, who had spent her own savings so their kids wouldn't fall behind in the summer, who had never once asked for thanks and never got it. And there they were, twisting her kindness into a punchline. I looked at Nathan, waiting, hoping for him to say something, to stop them, to put a hand up and say, "Hey, that's enough." But he just smiled. He chuckled along with the crowd, rubbing his chin like it was all harmless fun. Something broke inside me then, quietly, cleanly, like a cord snapping under pressure. I didn't speak. Not yet. But I knew. This wedding wasn't happening. Not with him. Not with them. Not after this. I didn't stand up right away. I sat there, still as stone, letting the laughter settle and the clinking of glasses die down. My fingers were wrapped around the stem of my untouched wine glass, and my heart thudded like it was trying to climb out of my chest. Nathan leaned over and whispered, "You okay?" Like I'd just heard a mildly off-color joke. I looked at him, really looked at him. There wasn't even a flicker of discomfort on his face. Not a trace of doubt. Just that same easy grin he wore around his parents. The same one he used when he wanted to stay on their good side. And in that moment, I knew. I set my glass down and stood up slowly. My chair scraped across the floor, making heads turn. I took a breath. "I have something to say," I said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. The room fell quiet again. Even Janice stopped smiling. "You all laughed just now," I said calmly. "You laughed at a story about my mother. A woman who gave everything she had to help others, including this family." Alan shifted in his chair, visibly uncomfortable. Nathan's expression flickered, but he said nothing. "You called her pushy," I continued, my voice steady. "Over-involved. Always showing up when no one asked her to." I scanned the room. "But you didn't mention how she tutored Ethan and Chloe after school when no one else had the time. Or how she paid out of her own pocket to keep their summer program running when the school board dropped the funding. Or how she never asked for recognition, not once, because that's not the kind of woman she was." A few people glanced at each other. No one interrupted. "You never thanked her," I said, turning toward Janice. "Not once. You built a business and a legacy on the backs of a lot of people who went unseen, and she was one of them." Janice opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "Don't. Just don't." Nathan stood up beside me, his voice low. "Ratch, this isn't the time." I turned to him. "You sat there and let them tear her down. You laughed with them." "I didn't mean it like that," he said quickly. "It was just a joke." I cut in. "It was never a joke to me." He reached for my arm, but I pulled back. "I'm not marrying into this," I said. "I can't. I won't." Gasps echoed from different corners of the room. My father stood slowly, uncertain. My aunt's hand flew to her chest. Nathan looked stunned. "You're serious?" I nodded. I was going to spend my life with someone who let my mother be turned into a punchline. But I won't spend another minute pretending that's okay. I took off my engagement ring and placed it carefully on the tablecloth in front of him. "Give it back to them," I said, my voice low. Then I turned and walked toward the exit. My family followed, quiet, shocked, but behind me. And as I pushed through the heavy double doors into the night air, I didn't feel regret. I felt free. The next morning, I woke up to 14 missed calls and 6 voicemails. All from Nathan. His last text read, "Please talk to me." I didn't know it meant that much. I stared at the screen, letting the silence settle. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Janice. "We're all very hurt by your outburst last night. You embarrassed Nathan in front of our entire community. I hope you're proud of yourself." Proud? No, but I was no longer ashamed. By noon, he showed up at my apartment. I saw him through the peephole, standing on my welcome mat in a wrinkled button-down, holding a small paper bag like some peace offering. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. "Can we talk?" he asked softly. I stepped aside, letting him in only because I didn't want to have this conversation in front of the neighbors. He set the bag on my kitchen counter and stood awkwardly by the fridge. "I brought you your favorite muffins from that place near your school," he said. I didn't touch the bag. "You really think muffins are going to fix this?" I asked. He sighed. "No, I just didn't know what else to do. Last night was a lot." I crossed my arms. Was it? Or did it finally just look like what it's always been? He looked at me, eyes pleading. I didn't mean to laugh. I was just caught off guard. I thought it was a dumb joke. I didn't think you'd take it so personally. "It was about my mother," I snapped. "And you did nothing. You sat there. You laughed with them." "I was trying to keep the peace," he said quickly. "There is no peace where there's no respect," I said. "You showed me exactly who you are. I just finally believed it." His voice cracked. "So that's it? After everything? We're just done?" "Yes," I said simply. He looked stunned. "You're not even willing to work through it." "I worked through it for 5 years," I said. "Every subtle jab. Every time I bit my tongue while your mother made comments about where I came from. Every time you stayed silent, so they could stay comfortable." He stepped toward me. "I love you." I stepped back. "Then you should have protected me. And you should have honored my mother." We stood there for a long moment, the air between us thick and final. Then I opened the door. He looked at me like he didn't recognize who I was anymore. That made 2 of us. As he walked out, I felt a strange mix of sadness and clarity. I locked the door behind him, slid the muffin bag off the counter, and dropped it in the trash. It was over. For good this time. It was 3 days after everything ended. I was cleaning out the hallway closet, not because I needed to, but because it helped keep the spinning thoughts at bay. One hand on a box of winter scarves, the other on an old shoebox labeled Mom's Things. I hadn't opened it in a while. I lifted the lid and immediately noticed something off. The tissue paper was folded differently, neater, like someone had touched it recently. My heart ticked faster. I shifted the top layer, then froze. The necklace was gone. It was a gold locket, heart-shaped, nothing flashy, just worn and warm from years around my mother's neck. I used to hold it between my fingers while she read to me. She wore it even through chemo, even when her hands shook too badly to clasp it herself. And now it wasn't there. I pulled the rest of the box apart, scattering photos and old cards across the carpet. My fingers moved faster, more frantic. But I already knew. I sat back on my heels, shaking. There were only 2 people who'd been in my apartment since I last checked that box. Me and Nathan. He'd come by to return the ring. He'd asked to use the bathroom. He'd been left alone for 3 minutes. I grabbed my phone and texted him. Me, did you take my mom's necklace? He didn't reply right away. I stared at the screen, willing it to light up. When it finally did, I felt sick. Nathan, what? No. Why would I do that? I called him. Straight to voicemail. I texted again. Me, I know it was in the memory box. You're the only one who's been here. I'm not playing games. Did you take it? 10 minutes passed before he finally answered. Nathan, okay. I didn't take it. I just borrowed it. I wanted to feel close to you. To her. It was sentimental. Sentimental. Like he had a right to her memory. Me, give it back. Now. He called. I declined. Then another text. Nathan, I didn't mean to upset you. I was going to return it. I just missed you. It reminded me of before everything went wrong. Everything didn't go wrong. He let it. Me, I'm not asking. I want it back. Today. He replied quickly this time. Nathan, fine. I'll bring it. It's not a big deal. That last line made something in me snap. Not a big deal. It was the only thing I had left that still smelled faintly of my mom's perfume. And he thought it was something to borrow. I didn't text again. I grabbed my keys. If he had the nerve to steal from the dead and call it sentiment, then I'd show up and take it back myself. I pulled up to the house slowly, tires crunching the long gravel driveway like a warning bell. The mansion looked the same as always, smug and oversized, with its perfectly manicured hedges and a marble lion out front that I'd always thought was ridiculous. I rang the bell with a steady hand. Nathan opened the door a few seconds later, holding the necklace in one hand like it was a coffee receipt. Hey, he said, like I was there to catch up. I was just about to. Save it, I said. I reached out, palm open. He dropped the locket into my hand. Cold metal, still warm from his pocket. I didn't thank him. Before I could turn around, I heard her voice. Rachel, Janice said from behind him, stepping into the foyer with her usual performative concern. Let's not turn this into another scene. We're all tired. I smiled tightly. This isn't a scene. It's a conclusion. She sighed like I was a difficult client. It's just a necklace. And frankly, if you wanted to keep this going over something so small, maybe it's good the wedding didn't happen. Something small, I repeated. That locket belonged to the woman who made sure your son and daughter got through school without slipping through the cracks. The same woman you turned into a dinner joke. You didn't just let Nathan take it. You raised him to believe it was okay. Janice crossed her arms. We all grieve differently. No, I said. You all manipulate differently. There's a difference. Nathan stepped forward. Look, I said I was sorry. I didn't mean it like that. You didn't mean to steal? Or you didn't mean to get caught? He flinched. I held the locket up between us. This was all I had left of her. And you treated it like it was yours to borrow. To feel close. You never even respected her when she was alive. You think I'd believe you suddenly value her now? She was just trying to help, he muttered. Exactly, I said. And all she ever got in return was silence. Janice took a step forward. Maybe we should all move on from this drama. Enough damage has been done. I looked her square in the eye. You're right. Damage has been done. Just not the way you think. I stepped back toward the door, hand gripping the necklace like a lifeline. My mother gave your family something you never deserved, Grace. And you twisted her memory into something you could laugh at over shrimp cocktails. Nathan looked down. For once, nothing smug left to say. I reached the door and paused one last time. Don't contact me again. I said without turning around. Not to apologize, not to reminisce, and definitely not to make yourselves feel better. Then I walked out. Sunlight hit my face like a slap and a blessing. I didn't look back. The door clicked shut behind me. Good. Let it stay that way. Back home, I set the necklace on my nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet I used to dread. It used to make me feel like something was missing. Now it felt like breathing room. Later that night, I pulled out the small wooden shadow box I'd kept in the closet since Mom passed. I lined it with soft blue velvet, the same shade she used to wear on rainy days. I placed the locket in the center and added her photo, the one where she's smiling at me from behind her old desk, red pen in hand, papers piled around her. I stepped back and looked at it for a long time. It didn't look like grief anymore. It looked like a boundary, a memory I protected instead of sacrificed. I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. I just felt still. I made a cup of tea, sat by the window, and texted my sister. Me. I didn't lose anything. I got myself back. Her reply came fast. Sister, about time. Mom would have been proud as hell. I smiled just a little. I could almost hear her voice, not dramatic or loud, just her even tone that always cut through chaos. You know who you are, honey. Never forget it. For 5 years, I'd built a life with someone who looked like a partner on paper, but never stood beside me when it counted. I'd convinced myself that love meant compromise, that biting my tongue was maturity, that being quiet was strength. But silence can also be surrender, and I was done surrendering. Outside, the street was still. The porch light hummed faintly. My phone didn't buzz. No calls. No pleading texts. No guilt. Just peace. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and leaned back in the chair. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like coming home.